welcome everyone. Thank you for tuning in. This is indeed Wednesday Night Sessions, the online reading series for KickstART Farmington, our local arts organization. I am your host, Mitch Nobis. It has been a minute, depending on what order these episodes are in. I might have already said that on the last episode, but we haven't recorded any in a couple of years. We did one or two in-person things in 2024, and we're glad to bring back the online component in 2025 for a lot of reasons. But for me, greedily, it's so I can talk to cool people that don't live, 20 miles from here and get to chat with folks, in this case, from North Carolina. Justin Bryant is joining us tonight. Kind of another one of those, some of my guests are sort of longtime online friends who I finally get to chat with on the show. So thanks for joining us, Justin.
Super excited to
The
be here.
Yeah, thanks for making time. Actually, not to give away too much, but the second question will get into sports because we talk sports a lot. And for the audience, we record these well in advance of when they air, and Justin had to race here from soccer practice. So
Yeah.
more on that in 10 minutes or so, I guess. But first, we like to do the reading. So let me give you a brief intro. Justin Bryant is the author of the 2023 novel Thunder from a Clear Blue Sky from Malarkey Books. His short fiction has appeared in Volume 1 Brooklyn, Bandit Fiction, Monkey Bicycle, and others. He lives in Raleigh, North Carolina with his wife Sarah and their dog Roxy. At this point, Justin, I toss it over to you.
Thank you, Mitch. I have my own copy, and I'm going to read from the very beginning of the book. It is an opening that was adapted from a standalone short story that was published years ago in Vlak magazine out of Prague. So it's relatively self-contained, and I think it works fairly well for things like this. For people listening, it shouldn't take more than 10 minutes to read. So this is from the very beginning of the novel. On the flight deck of a 1941 production DC-3, First Officer Oscar Labruna, studying the radar, sees that there is a line of storms across Panama and extending into the Mosquito Coast. The storms have been routing commercial air traffic far out to sea, but Labruna knows he will not have the luxury of diverting. They don't carry enough fuel for such a detour. Labruna can't yet tell from his radar where the strongest storms are waiting, but he's not nervous. He enjoys the challenge presented by bad weather. I don't fly the plane, he likes to brag. I orchestrate it. The pattern of the storms begins to appear on his radar. The plane is over 70 years old, but it has been retrofitted with the latest and best avionics and engines. Labruna is surprised and a little concerned by what he sees. He can switch views to examine the storm by rainfall amount and temperature, and can view lightning strikes superimposed over both. There is not much rain, and the frequency of lightning is only moderate, but the clouds appear light blue. They are cool. This is because they are towering high into the stratosphere, far above the plane's maximum altitude. Labruna looks forward out the cockpit windows. There is nothing to see but black sky and wispy vapor illuminated by their running lights. It is 9:14 p.m. He looks at Captain Ferreira, seated to his right. It's going to be bumpy, Labruna says. I can see that, Ferreira replies, leaning over to check the radar himself. It's not my favorite thing, junking around at night in weather when you can't see a damn thing, Ferreira says. Then he laughs and wipes a hand across his mouth. Labruna tunes to Panama City radio for local weather. It is clear, light wind at the airport, but that is still 200 miles away, and somewhere in between them are mountains of boiling cloud. His radar indicates that they are approaching the edge of the first storm, but ahead in the dark night they still see nothing. Labruna cranes his head upward and sees a few stars. This reassures him for now. My aircraft, Ferreira says. He has been in control of the flight throughout, but this is his way of reminding Labruna not to input the flight controls. I suppose I'd better tell him, Ferreira says, almost to himself. He picks up the intercom, pauses for a moment, and asks their passenger to come into the cockpit. The man enters. He is tall and strongly built, with thick forearms and fingers and muscles on his back and neck that spread his shirt collar wide. Ferreira explains the problem with the storm. The tall man listens, but Labruna can tell he's not really hearing. He's got something else on his mind. Ferreira suggests the man strap himself into his jump seat. The tall man exits, and Labruna and Ferreira turn back to the problem of the storm. Labruna's radar is now a mosaic of green, yellow, and red pixels. They are close enough that he can begin to discern the structure of the storm system. It's both good and bad news. It is a highly powerful multi cell cluster, but there appear to be gaps and valleys between the cells. Already, his mind makes sense of the colors and patterns. He can see a route through. Here we go, he says. He smiles quickly at Ferreira. Left 220, that's good. Hold that. Ahead of them, suddenly, faintly illuminated, is the storm. The cloud structures provide reference for their speed. They are hurtling towards the gray black mountains, but the valley he'd seen on his radar is there. Left, left, just a little, he says. Ferreira eases them between the cells. A little buffeting, Ferreira says, referring to the feedback in his stick, but the air is still smooth. Okay, well, you can level and then we'll have to turn hard right. You can see it there. Turn, turn. Ferreira banks them to the right. The right wingtip is clear of the storm cell by less than 100 feet. Out his window on the left side, Labruna looks up for the stars, but sees only the neighboring cell looming above them. He scans the radar. The valley is closing fast. The cells are colliding around them. They are at 25,000 feet, their maximum altitude. Right, there's a gap, but it's closing. You'll level here and then right at 226, and then, well, it may close on us, but it's narrow there. We'll be through it in 15 seconds. Out the other side, Frere asks. Yeah, Labruna answers uncertainly, but looking at the radar, he already knows he's wrong. Out the windows, he sees the valley coming to a dead end, and the wall of cloud, primed with moisture and driven higher by updrafts at the front of the squall line, now rising impossibly above them. There is nowhere to turn. Before Labruna can say anything, Ferreira sees it too and mutters, shit. Can we jump it? We can try, the captain answers. Ferreira nudges the throttle and eases the nose slightly up. The plane responds initially, but Labruna knows this is dangerous. If the plane isn't able to climb any further, the nose up attitude will cause them to lose airspeed and, quickly, altitude. 25.3, Labruna says, reading the altimeter. They've climbed 300 feet. We need more. Labruna no longer feels exhilarated by the challenge. Adrenaline has been replaced by dread. Solid cloud walls are all around them now. It's like slaloming through skyscrapers 100 feet above city streets. Lightning explodes right outside their windows. He has been listening to commercial flights chatter about the storm on the radio. He would like to join in, ask for route suggestions, or just for best wishes, but of course he can't. The, the tall man pays them to be invisible. Graveyards in the sky. That's what his first flight instructor used to call thunderstorms. The cloud wall rushes to meet them. She's strong, he says to Ferreira, but really to reassure himself. She can take anything. They look at each other and force smiles. Clouds swallow them. For 2 or 3 seconds, the air remains smooth, and then there is a single bang, and they are jolted upwards with a floating sensation, the kind you get when you hit a pothole too fast on a country road. Labruna can feel the plane settling back into its trajectory, and then the turbulence comes. It throws the plane as if it is in the jaws of a giant terrier, up and down, left and right. A downdraft hits the right wing and snaps them into a 40-degree bank. Ferreira struggles to level. There follows a series of smaller but incredibly violent bumps, blurring the instruments to the point where Labruna can't read the altimeter or airspeed indicator. The plane sounds like nickels shaken in a tin can, all groaning metal, slaps and bangs, deeper thudding from the cargo hold. He thinks of the old joke about DC 3s, a collection of loose parts flying in tight formation. It doesn't seem funny now. Incandescent white light explodes in front of them, filling the windows and cockpit. Labruna is momentarily blinded. The sound is unexpectedly muted, a muffled metallic groan, and all the instrument panels and interior lights blink off. The cockpit is dead. Labruna's eyes adjust rapidly. Without any glare or interior illumination, the clouds outside swirl in a mixture of charcoal, black, and white. Lightning strike, Ferrari says. Engines, he asks. Without instrumentation, Labruna cannot be sure, but his instincts and the way his body feels in his seat tell him that they are still being propelled forward. Engine 1, good, he says. Engine 2, good. Labruna begins the process of rebooting the interior power. When he flips the final switch, there is a reassuring click and a flicker of light. Before power returns completely, he looks out the window again, and something to his left catches his eye. They are still plowing through heavy cloud, but through it he sees the silhouette of a plane flying abreast but above him by several hundred feet, backlit by more flashes of lightning. Proximity warning, he says, almost in disbelief. What? Proximity warning, 10 o'clock, they're above us. Ferreira begins turning them to the right just as cockpit power returns in a series of blinking lights. Labruna checks both his radar and airborne collision avoidance system screen, but the first is blank and the second is still booting up. He sees the plane again, receding as they turn away. It is a DC 3 of the same vintage as theirs. There, he says, pointing. Ferreira looks over and sees it. The plane disappears into cloud. What the hell? Ferreira says, angry and mystified. Does he have another plane up here with us? Another series of violent jolts rock the plane. Labruna scans his radar for any sign of relief, and then there might be a gap opening at your 2 o'clock. I see it. Ferreira has continued the climb, helped by strong updrafts, and they are nearly out the top of the storm. For a split second, they find clear air, and he banks towards a seam between the cells, but it closes just as fast, and again they crash and bang against masters of moisture heavy cloud. At one point, a downdraft drops them 300 feet in 3 seconds. Ferreira fights it and slowly begins to climb again. Labruna looks up. Solid cloud gives way in places to gauzy haze. Patches of black sky begin to show. Climb, climb, he urges. He sees a single star shining through the haze. They burst through a final curtain of mist, and suddenly they are skimming along the top of the storm. His radar goes black. The sky ahead and above them is awash in stars. They are free. The plane flies smooth and true. Ferreira sighs and says simply, fuck. Labruna peers over his shoulder and can see part of the gray wall of the storm receding, still spitting lightning. The captain descends to 23,000 feet. He leans back in his seat and stretches his neck. Labruna, his fingers trembling, reduces the gain on the radar so he can see the storm again, already 5 miles behind them. Although it is long and winding like a serpent, there is a bulge in the center where multiple cells are colliding, and he can see that it is tracking to the west toward the Gulf of Chiriqui. It will either spend its venom there or continue to grow into something that makes the news. The tall man comes back into the cockpit. He still looks fierce, but Labruna thinks he looks a little shaken, too. Are you okay, sir? Ferrara asks. The tall man doesn't answer. He is coiled and tense like the storm itself. Labruna can see his rib cage expand with each breath. The tall man looks past them, out the cockpit windows. A carpet of benign cloud glides below, faintly illuminated by the tapestry of stars above and a sliver of moon newly risen. His breathing slows. It's beautiful, he says. The clouds unroll beneath them. The engines hum and the radio crackles with chatter, pilots and air traffic control trying to fight the storm. But to Labruna, it feels very quiet in the cockpit. Yes, Ferreira agrees. Yes, it's beautiful. You must see beautiful things all the time from up here, the tall man says. Ferreira looks at Labruna. Yes, sir, we do. The tall man crosses his arms in front of his chest as he stares out the cockpit windows. I envy you, he says. I took flying lessons when I was a teenager, single engine plane, but other things got in the way. Labruna wonders if the man has any idea how dangerous the storm was. Maybe this is heaven, the tall man says, to fly forever on a beautiful night and never have to land? Who can say, sir? Ferreira answers. What a heaven that would be, the tall man says, to never land, to stay up here with the moon. He shakes his head. Well, right, who can say? Who can really say? He nods again, then returns to the cabin. Captain Ferreira exhales deeply. Labruna looks out the window to his left, but sees only the receding storm. And that is it.
Thank you, man. That was fantastic.
Thank you.
I had initially read the book, I want to say about a year ago right now. We were talking before the show officially started. I work in high schools, so I get the spring break. But as a middle-aged man, I don't go to Cancun. I hang out. So I usually do a lot of reading. And I want to say it was about a year ago, and I forgot how gripping the intro scene is. I absolutely love the like once they're finally through the description of the storms colliding like a serpent. It's just some marvelous description there.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, it's funny when I read it back. I don't read my own work very often at all, and even now, a full 2 years after publication, I have this urge to edit as I'm reading.
Yeah,
I'm sure a lot of writers can relate to
yeah.
that.
Yeah, I think we both chatted with Aaron Birch online before. He posted a photo earlier. He was at AWP and did a reading and shared a photo of from a book. Like, he had edited on paper something
Oh
already
wow!
published, like all the
Yeah,
lines he was crossing out. Like, I'm not gonna read this. Like,
right.
so like it's never done.
Yeah,
It's the old is it Steinbeck, like the old, it's not done. You just have to send it into the world.
right. At some point, yeah, you have to let it go. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel that. Well, and not to give away too much, I do hope some of our audience go track down Justin's book. And not to give too much away, but it does get a bit into the like the what, mirror plane, the mysterious second plane. In the part you read is sort of your first glimpse that the story does get a bit into like magical realism or surrealism down the road. And again, without giving away too much, but like I love that it's maybe two-thirds of the way through this whole like kind of palace compound appears where the laws of physics don't necessarily apply in the normal ways. And okay, I'll leave it at that because I want to wet the audience's whistle and hopefully they track down and get their own copy of the book. But it does get into these kind of surrealistic areas. So on the show, I usually ask two questions, of course. And the first one is kind of more writerly, and the second one is often something um, off topic, so to speak. So for the writing question, I'm really intrigued by this kind of magical realism vibe that your book captures. And I'm curious how you go about that. Like, did you plot this out? Did you know this book was going to kind of veer off the laws of physics, or were you just writing and sort of followed these ideas where they took you? You know, that's a common question for any novelist, but I think it's kind of even more intriguing in this situation. Like, did you plan on this book kind of messing with reality, or did that just sort of, is that where the narrative took you?
I definitely planned on it. It was a conscious decision because essentially everything I had ever written, and certainly everything I'd ever published for 25 years, including doing an MFA and a thesis and a short fiction collection, had all been pretty straight realism. Um, my influences were probably Richard Yates and Peter Matheson and Robert Stone. And I read Memoirs of a Survivor by Doris Lessing sometime around, I don't know, I'd like to say 15 years ago or so. And I just thought, that seems more fun than what I do. Where everything has some sort of logical reason for being, and there isn't really a sense of mystery or wonder. Instead, I was always exploring, the grim realities of modern life. I mean, who we probably don't need me to add to that, that oeuvre. But so I just thought, um, and then the easiest thing to do is just make up a magical world where there are no rules whatsoever, and you don't have to explain anything, and just truly bizarre things can happen for no reason. I didn't want to do that either. So again, without giving too much away, what I hope sort of remains a little bit of a mystery, even to someone who has finished this book, would be how much of the surreal elements actually happened and how much are the result of a protagonist who's suffering from untreated malaria.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
and partly that came from my own experience with anti-malaria medication, which I took when I was on safari in South Africa, which absolutely scrambled my brain and sense of reality. And I don't know if it's what they prescribe anymore. I don't even remember what it was called, but I just remember not being sure if I was awake or dreaming, and not being certain that what I was seeing was real. Um, so again, we are we're in the tropics, and this character has malaria untreated, doesn't know it, and so I just decided it would be fun to still have the framework of a novel where there is, an inciting incident and rising action and some sort of climax and resolution and denouement, and then there's meant to be character development and fairly standard stuff, but in the context of a novel where a lot of this takes place, as you say, as the characters travel physically in the book, they are getting further and further away from what you and I would consider normal reality, and they're
Right.
getting to a place where there are lakes that are sloped on an angle but still
Yeah.
holding water, and they come across a grand hotel that's sort of modeled after the sanitarium in the Magic Mountain, which exists in the 1920s with tuberculosis patients, and the 1960s as a luxury resort, and present day abandoned, and the characters experience different elements of that, and they sense or even see people from those eras while they're there. So I guess I just wanted to have what the kind of fun that I saw Doris Lessing having, and then the effect it had on me as a reader, not reading it like a writer, but the effect it had on me as a reader was it was unnerving but intriguing. And neither of those things is bored. And that's my greatest priority as a writer is I don't want this to be boring. So like the scene I wrote here is mostly grounded in reality. That second plane is a little hint of some of the things that are to come. But personally, I am petrified of being in a 70-year-old airplane flying through a tropical storm. And so, a scene like that is propelled by a sense of danger. Um, and there's a sense of danger throughout the book, and that's what the title refers to. But they're mostly unseen sources of danger. So, thunder from a clear blue sky. I mean, I just drove through a thunderstorm to get here, and it was very evident that this is kind of dangerous. My phone was honking at me to tell me severe thunderstorm, and I could see the lightning and all that. Um, but when there's something unnerving or amiss, and you can't immediately identify what that is, to me, that's more, it's creepier. Uh,
Yeah.
it's creepier to experience, and it's more fun to write. So I think all going back to your question, I definitely planned it. I wanted the book to steadily progress from scenes that are largely grounded in the reality that we know, that our five senses show us, and then just distort those the further we go, yet still have them relevant and germane to what's happening in the novel, and the characters still trying to sort of fulfill a sense of purpose, even in the face of their recognition of the world not being the one that they had grown up in.
Yeah. Man, there's like 9,000 things I love about that answer that I want to circle back on. But I love that because like that it still holds a cohesive narrative. Like it does all that, but it's still, it's like
I
five
hope it
episodes, like
does.
you were saying. I thought so. Yeah. I mean, you can see, the protagonist, there's even like the love interest yearning to get back to, like there's all these kind of traditional tropes, for lack of a better word. They still exist, but in the middle of all the loosening grip of reality. And I never would have guessed that this was based on, in a loose sense, on reality of your own experiences with malaria medication. I absolutely love that part of the answer.
Yeah.
Um, I would not have guessed that. So
Just kind of as an inspiration, not really representative of what I experienced, but that was at that point in my life, I had never done, for instance, mushrooms or anything like that. So I was the first time that my senses ever went, "Hey, we're going to show you a totally different version of the world." Uh,
yeah.
and it was, once I got through that experience, it was really intriguing and something I wanted to explore.
Yeah, I can absolutely see that. Like I imagine knowing that now, I'm not surprised the way that it peeks its head into the book, right? But it's the sort of thing like once you go through it yourself, like I've got to do something with this. And that might be a writer's brain. Like I totally feel that, like I've survived this. Now I've got to use it. Normal
Right.
people probably just go back to work on Monday, but
Sure. Yeah.
dudes like you and I are like scribbling notes.
Oh yeah. Every experience has its value.
Yeah. Oh, that's outstanding. All right, very cool. Well, thank you very much for that. Question two, we will switch gears kind of wildly. Um, so audience, Justin and I have chatted online a number of times, sometimes about writing, but probably more so about sports. I'm an avid basketball player and fan. Justin hustled into this recording straight from soccer practice. He's a soccer coach. And I think you've talked about tennis online too before, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, so a couple of different sports and high level at that, from the sounds of things. So I'm wondering if maybe you can expound on that a little bit more, but I'm also curious, since it is a writing podcast or show, whatever we are, reading series, um, what similarities do you see between these two worlds? So you're an accomplished writer, an accomplished athlete. How do these things compare? In what ways are they similar? In what ways are they wildly different? Just kind of talk to us about that for a minute.
Sure. Well, just quickly on the background, I was a professional soccer player for a span of 7 years. I was not. I was a struggling pro, and so I wasn't under contract the whole time there. I had some period in between teams. I went to college, D1 program on a scholarship, and I played a little bit for Orlando City in the old league that existed before MLS, and even before USL. It was the ASL. And I played for a very small team in England called Bournemouth FC, who people who watch the Welcome to Wrexham show might recognize, because that's the team Wrexham beat to win promotion on the final day of the season. I think in that first season of the show. And then when I was done playing, I have mostly worked in coaching. Um, Apart from the years I did my MFA in NYU and adjuncted for a little bit, I've mostly been a college soccer coach, which has been really good for me because it's sort of better for me to not. I know some people, work in academia and writing, and there's sometimes a challenge then to find time for their own work, or not be distracted by student writing or something like that. Coaching has worked well for me because I don't have to sort of dip two toes in the writing world. I can just concentrate on my writing, and I can just do soccer. There is crossover in some ways, though. So one of the things I would say that my sports background does for me is it's sort of made me immune to the learning curve that writers have to go through about developing a shell regarding rejection. If you're, I see a lot of positives from the association between the two. The main one is that a lifetime spent trying to make it in professional soccer involved so many setbacks, so many difficult moments, so many outright humiliations. I should add, I was a goalkeeper too, and so that's a particularly mentally taxing position where you just get used to a degree of frustration. That when I started submitting writing and getting rejections, I never really took that personally. I had already sort of developed this protective shell around me from soccer background, and particularly in Europe when I would play and there would be, drunk supporters right behind my goal hurling abuse at me, and the fans of the other team were even worse sometimes. Um, that's a joke, but they so one of the main ways is sort of preparing me for life in writing, which is not one where you are constantly feted um, with glory and fame and riches. And so you understand that there is a process. You follow the process. You hope for improvement, and you hope for the best performance you can have. There's not an opponent in writing as there is in sport, and I know you're a baller and a hooper. What I do now is I play competitive league tennis. I really throw myself into that with a lot of a lot of enthusiasm. And another benefit is it's just a distraction. It's a really, I think, healthy distraction to think about. Why do I keep hitting my forehand down the line long, rather than thinking, why did I spend 13 years writing a novel that only a couple hundred people are ever going to read, and which will be forgotten to the sands of time? And so our sports problems are much more superficial and temporary and trivial. And so I think it's, in many cases, is better to sort of burden ourselves with those,
Yeah.
rather than big picture. Why do I write, or bemoaning the state of writing and reading and literature, which is easy to do because I think every generation that's ever existed has been told this is the worst time to be a writer. I I think they were all correct. It always has been the worst time to be a writer, and now is the worst time. It's going to be even worse for another generation that I don't have to worry about. But um, sports, and then some of the ways that they are similar is that There people don't like to talk about this concept of improving as a writer. There is a romantic notion, and there is a subset of people who like to think that you're a genius or you're not, you're gifted or you're not,
Yeah.
and these tools that you have, are were divinely inspired or came to you through no work of your own, like Mozart, and you just are a vassal, for
Yeah.
them. I don't believe that. I do think that some degree of rigor and work produces better writing. Um, just as I know from 25 years as a coach that that training efficiently and effectively and with some forethought and planning, it can improve athletic skills. And so I think in particular, when my early writing got published and I would be brave enough to read it back, I just thought, wow, I don't my dialogue feels really stilted and fake compared to people who I think do it well. And so that's something I started making an almost sports like effort to improve. I would eavesdrop on people and listen to the way they really talked, and I would try to write like that. And then I'd realize, well, a reflection of reality doesn't always make for interesting fiction.
Yeah.
If it's too close to reality, how do people actually talk? They stop, they start, they stutter, they
Mhm.
change their mind, they speak over each other in conversations, which you almost never see reflected on the written page because that's hard to follow.
It's impossible to do.
So I
Yeah.
sort of realized, well, a straight, hard, realistic recreation of how people actually talk is not necessarily the way to go. What's most important is that I think in fiction, particularly, I'm not sure how this relates to poetry, but in fiction, people should only talk if the person there who's listening to them doesn't like what they're saying or loves it or something. But there's no reason to replicate in fiction an exchange where someone talks about how they think the new Nissan Sentra is pretty good,
Yeah.
and that discussion go on for 17 sentences. Like there's just that may be what I know that's what really happens in real life, but that doesn't make for compelling reading. And so dialogue has lots of purposes. It can move plot along, but to me, as a reader, I find it more compelling when it makes me think: Are these? What is the relationship between these two people? Are they on equal standing? Is one subordinate to the other? Do they like each other? Does one dislike the other? Do they know that about each other? Are they trying to figure that out? Like that, there's so much great possibility in that. And again, I feel like I did to a small degree improve mine through practicing it, much like you might try to, practice your step back three
Mhm.
or your forehand down the line. Um, Ultimately, in the big picture, I just think it doesn't have to be sports. I think this is true for writers who garden, writers who hike, writers who do pottery or some kind of other expressive outlet or some kind of physical thing. They do yoga, whatever it may be. Um, for me, I know for a fact it would not be healthy for me to circle the vortex and downward spiraling vortex of always being in my own head about my writing. Um, I think that would lead me to dark places that might produce some interesting work, but not for very long because
Yeah.
it would take me down into the void with it.
Yeah.
And I never really bought into the you have to be crazy to be an artist thing, and I'm trying not to be. I'm trying to be healthy, happy person at the same time. Maybe exploring some of my more unnerving impulses or interests in the writing itself.
Like, you're batting 1,000. Both questions had like a umpteen million things I could circle back and ask more about. I love so many parts of that answer. I taught high schoolers how to write for decades, really, and I would always equate it, the same thing you said, like, I love basketball. I would say writing every day is like shooting 100 free throws. Like you're not going to get good at it unless you do it every day and that you're actually trying to do it well.
Right.
You can't just toss the ball over your back. Like you actually, you have to use the proper form and you'll get there. And I would always follow that up with like that's just me. I like basketball. Take your thing, you know
Yeah.
learning to dive better, to, hit the forehand, apply the same concept. It's going to be the same deal. Learning how to skateboard requires repetitive, practice over and over and over again. And it stinks. You stink at anything for a
Yep.
long time.
Oh yeah.
I know it's much besmirched isn't the right word, but criticized, the whole Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours thing. But there is research behind that book. Like, he might be a pop psychologist writer or whatever, but the basic premise of you're not really good at it until thousands of hours of practice, that part holds true.
Yeah,
you know
for sure.
and I loved your answer. Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing. The throw yourself into tennis, and it's the same deal. You get to practice and you want to get good at it. And I loved your point also about how the benefit of athletics is, like, you get in the zone, and then it's gone, which is sad but also good. You can't dwell in it for as long.
I will add quickly one thing about tennis. The great attraction to me, for me, to tennis is that I'm not that good at it, and I don't hold myself to a high standard. I have tried playing soccer again, and I tried very recently. I joined a team this January, and I played 2 games, and I just didn't enjoy it as much as I wish I could, because I'm 58 years old now, and I've held up well physically, and I can still play a little bit, but it's just not that fun because I once did it at a professional level. The last game I played was the USL final in 1995. There were 13 odd thousand people there. If you tell me now, show up at 9 o'clock on a Sunday morning, and play on a field with a bunch of youth games on either side of you, I'm a little bit of a snob about it. And it's just not
Yeah.
that fun because what's the line? If I hadn't seen such riches, I could live with being poor. Well, tennis affords me that. I don't have a tennis background. I don't have expectations of being good at it. It's just a fun thing to throw myself into. And because I'm starting from such a low level, my improvements are noticeable and still possible at this age. Whereas there's no way I'm ever going to get better at anything involving soccer. I peaked 30 years ago. So
Right.
yeah.
I love that. It Yeah, I vibe with a lot of that. I'm 51 myself. I had meniscus surgery last fall. I'm kind of in that point where, like, I'm still playing, old man rec league basketball, but my brain wants to do a thing my body just literally can't do,
Yeah.
anymore. So, like, it's different. I was never at your level, to be very clear. I was never anywhere close to professional level. Um,
But I
no,
know it's important to you. I actually see it in your posts, in your tweets, like, and because it makes me think of how I feel about tennis. And I message back and forth with a friend of mine that plays league tennis too, and we're like super nervous on the day that we have a match,
yeah,
leading up to the match that night, even though, of course, we know it is utterly meaningless. It's adult recreational tennis.
that's-
It just doesn't matter, and yet it's the kind of thing that we've thrown ourselves into. And I know that I see it in my wife when she talks about her garden. And sometimes she's really proud and really happy about how the broccoli came in of squash. And then sometimes things don't work, or she bakes and she bakes at a really high level. Um, and often it's outstanding and professional level stuff. And then when it doesn't work, she's disappointed, she says it's okay, it doesn't matter, but I know it really bothers her because anything you hold yourself to a bit of a standard to
yep,
and you don't quite hit that standard, that's disappointing. And to circle it finally back to writing one last time, I think the lucky thing for me in writing is that my taste has always far outpaced my talent. And so I don't have any expectations of writing to the level of the writers I most greatly admire. Doris Lessing inspired me to write a novel like this. That novel's not as good as Doris Lessing, and that's
right,
okay. There's
yeah,
Doris Lessing is going to be read in 300 years, and so it's okay. I'm all right with that. I just want to do the best I can do.
yeah. Oh, I love that. That's a great note to end on. I totally feel the same way about my own work. I love that answer. Like, I think often with writing of the old John Lee Hooker song, Boogie Chillin', where he says it's in him and it's got to come out. He's talking
Yeah,
about singing and dancing, but,
yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
that's I think sports and writing. It's both. It's art. It's, anything where you're trying to achieve the zone. Like,
Yep.
it's in you. You're gonna do it. do it for you. And if it finds an audience, awesome. If not, still find joy in it yourself, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Awesome. Hey, Justin, thank you very much for carving time out of your night to do this. It's been an absolute pleasure.
I loved it. Absolute blast. Thank you, Mitch.
All right, you're very welcome. Audience, check us out next time. We'll have more episodes in this season. And thanks for joining us.